morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with a very special premiere for you guys. And this is about the general elections that are taking place across the globe, guys. 2024 really is a massive year. Not just for the United Kingdom, not just for the United States, but for many countries across the globe. And we're going to be looking at a special article from Al Jazeera, guys, that are going to highlight some of the key nations that really democracy is really going to be put to the test. Now 2024 is going to be a mixed one. Some people fear the worst, some are hopeful. We're going to look at several different nations, that we might not think too much of, that perhaps maybe have more ramifications than we know, guys. This article is from Al Jazeera that breaks down some of the information that for us to give us a better understanding of some of the elections that are taking place across the globe. So the headline is "The Year of Elections is 2024 Democracy's Biggest Test Ever." More than 2 billion people across 50 countries are expected to go to the polls this year, and here are 10 major elections to watch. So just as a caveat, the United Kingdom is not in these 10 major elections we're going to look at. We're going to look at a separate article after, guys, but just for that. But I want to give my thoughts before we start really talking about some of the nations. So there has been a great deal of change over the last decades or so about whether or not people have been, without a shadow of a doubt, been influenced by the power of misinformation, the use of money that wealthy businessmen and organizations have really pumped into media outlets, into social media, to really influence and change opinions of others for their own benefit. It has become more and more of a recurring theme that people seem to be blamed. They try to blame people, have them blame each other, as opposed to blaming the rich and the powerful. This is a tactic that many across the globe have been trying to use, and it has worked. And without whatever they've done, they've always tried to make sure that whatever is going wrong in your life, whatever is problems that are taking place, it is always the case of it's never us, it's always someone else. And it is always a case of trying to point that finger elsewhere. It is a tactic and it does work. And the question is that how do we counteract this information, counteract the misinformation, the misinformation? And well, the best way to counter it is by calling it out. And there are some great YouTubers, there are some great journalists, there are great responsible media outlets such as Byline Times, as well as Al Jazeera, who I think do a wonderful job as well, to call out the misinformation that is coming across. And that is really, really important. Even YouTubers who may not have the biggest of influence across the globe, they still have an influence, and it's that they do play a vital role too in calling out this information. Calling it out on social media, on the likes of Facebook and Twitter and whatnot, does help, but it is also important that calling out is also done on the streets, because not everybody spends their time on social media. It's important that people are told the truths about what is happening in the world. And the most truthful thing is what you see with your own eyes on your streets around you, and not just what the media tells you, not just what papers tell you, and believing everything is wrong in the world, and that everything is at the fault of, let's say, immigration. Immigration is one of the biggest talking points. Is going to be one of the talking points in lots of elections, guys. For example, Pakistan. We know that Pakistan have last year removed loads of Afghanistans who have been part of the nation for pretty much for about 10-20 years or so, ever since dating all the way back to when Russia invaded Afghanistan. Remember the conflict back then. Last year they exiled, pretty much pushed all the Afghan people out, all because of the rhetoric of we don't want any other kind, we want only our own kind, sort of thing. We have that in Hungary as well, where Viktor Orban and that Hungary, he doesn't want the mixture of other nations and cultures involved in their country, and it creates this us and you rhetoric and line, thunder line that you see. And this line is being used not just in those countries, but of course here in the UK. It's being used in the US. It's being used in France. This idea that some cultures and that shouldn't be mixed, and that everyone should be kind of separated, sort of thing. Whereas what happened to, in my opinion, what happened to everyone working together for a better society? What happened to that? Divide and conquer is the term that I believe is what the rich and powerful want to do. That is the key for me, is what they are aiming to try and do, guys. And we must counteract this argument, and we must all play our parts, in whatever democracy, whatever elections that we are taking place across the globe. It really does matter. I hope you found that a bit informative. So let's read into it, guys. So it is the year of the vote. Countries that are home to nearly half of the world's population will pick up their governments in elections in 2024. Something that has never happened in a single year before. That's the significant thing, guys. Starting with Bangladesh on January the 7th, the polls include 7 out of the world's 10 most popular nations: India, the US, Indonesia, Pakistan, Russia, Mexico, and the others. I think we kind of know how we're going to feel about Russia and Mexico, Russia and the US when we get to them. I'm curious to see how the other ones are going to go. Some are established democracies, others are fledgling ones, and still others are effectively autocracies with votes with few. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice again. With few real options for the electorate to choose from. Yet growing concerns that democracies as a whole are backsliding. Worries articulate from non-profits like Swedish V-Dem Institute and the US-based Freedom House. The elections are a mixed bag of nations, represent a watershed year for the concept of democracy itself, according to the cultural and political sociologist Andrew Perrin of Hopkins University. From increased ethnic violence to steps aimed at weakening judicials and other checks on the powers of the executive, the threats of democracy are real, says experts. But there are countervailing pressures too. The popularity of democracy as measured by public opinion remains high. A survey of over 36,000 respondents from over 30 countries conducted by Open Society Foundation in 2023 backs this up, as more than 80% of surveyed respondents said they want to live in a democracy. That appeal now faces the stiffest test in a single year, and here are the key elections in 2024 that could shape the world and the future of democracy. I just also want to point out that there should be some optimism, especially with what happened in Poland last year as well, with one of the what happened with the Polish elections, with Donald Tusk becoming gaining power there. That should give you some pause for optimism that is happening in the world. That even though that lots of democracies are at stake, while it's not for another 4 or 5 years for the French elections, I'm fairly confident that Emmanuel Macron's party are going to fall to Marine Le Pen of the far right, and it won't be a good time for France when that does come around, because the right wing kind of thing is starting to grow. But obviously the biggest challenge will be trying to overcome the ever aggravating unions there in France. At least that's how they perceive them. But the French unions are one of the strongest in their nation. So let's look at the first one, guys. So the first one here is Bangladesh. Incumbent Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is seeking a 5th term in office after an intense crackdown on opposition parties and activists. Hasina, who belongs in the Awami League, has been in power since 2009. The main opposition, the Bangladesh National Party, BNP, has boycotted the elections, citing government interference. It has demanded that a caretaker government be allowed to conduct the election. An Awami League government rejected that demand. The BNP's top leader is either jailed or in exile. Several political activists, including BNP leaders, have faced arrests and violence at the hands of police and ruling party supporters. In December 2023, Human Rights Watchdog reported that at least 10,000 opposition activists were arrested in the month following a planned rally by the BNP on October the 28th. Rights groups and countries such as the US have expressed concern about the violence and the potential lack of fairness in the elections. So this is one of the fears that many, when they turn away from democracy, is what they fear that will happen, by potentially taking away the power to give free and fair elections, but to create perception to the people that there is a democracy, that people have a vote, that their vote does have some kind of factor or meaning here. And this is one of the examples of a nation that where you think your vote counts, but according to the opposition, your vote does not count. And what the opposition are trying to claim, guys, is that, hey, we want we want a neutral government to take place and to conduct this election. They're claiming that it's rigged. Well, the main party are saying no, we're not going to do that. So they feel that they're never going to get into power because of the way that their elections are run. Now, obviously, I don't have much knowledge, obviously, when it comes to Bangladesh, but still, this is something that takes us away from you and having the democratic right in your vote having a meaning to what goes on in your country. And this is one of the things. So obviously they've says here they've obviously had planned rallies, and they're trying very hard to make their voices heard. But the thing is that what happens if they never be able to win? You know, what's the alternative? Well, what ends up happening is violence, doesn't it? It turns to violence, it turns to hatred. But what happens is, as well, is on the other side, from the government's perspective, what they do is crack down on it, keep themselves in power. Now, the Awami League here says he's been in power since 2009, so that's a long time that they've been in power as well. And also, Human Rights Watch have reported at least 10,000 opposition activists have been arrested as well. So clearly, there is a question of democracy in Bangladesh. Here, do we see something changing here? I very much doubt it. But I will say is that just because there isn't a fair democratic election now doesn't mean to say that there can't be one in the future. Is what I will say when it comes to Bangladesh. Additionally, there are concerns about the corruption scandal and an economic downturn. While Bangladesh's growing economy has traditionally been a stabilising force in the country's politics, labour unrest and protests for higher wages, along with diminishing purchasing powers, are adding strain. Bangladesh's 2024 elections can become the most consequential election in the history of the country, said Ali Raz, the chair of the Department of Politics and Government at Illinois State University. The country is standing at the crossroads of becoming a de facto one-party state and reversing its democratic course. Raz explains that the lack of viable opposition can lead to an autocracy. Autocracy, I think it's the word, if I'm saying the word right. But if the West responds to what many are describing as a sham election by imposing sanctions on Bangladesh, it could hurt the country's working class the most. If any punctual measures is taken by Western countries, the situation will have devastating impact on the lives of the poor and the middle class, who are already suffering, he said. Bangladesh has a population of 170 million people. More than 1,800 candidates will be contesting 300 seats in Bangladesh's national parliament. A total of 27 political parties have registered. So whether there'll be sanctions or not will be one thing, but as I've said, obviously, democracy is at stake as the continuing same party seems to be holding the power of the elections, and oppositions are claiming that it's not a free and fair election. So that seems to be going on for quite a while there in Bangladesh. One to definitely keep an eye on. This is a big one, guys. This is really a big one. Taiwan. Self-ruling Taiwan, which is claimed by Beijing, will elect its president on January the 13th. The president will replace its incumbent Tse Wang and navigate through a critical phase of Taiwan's history. Taisar of the Independent Learning Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, was elected in 2016. Ever since then, China has intensified its pressure on the island by conducting military activities around the island and encouraging Taipei's few remaining formal diplomatic allies to switch recognition to Beijing. 3 candidates running for the president are Lai Chang to reform the DPP, who is known to be more independent-leaning than the TASI. Moderate Kuomintang leader Hai Hu-yi and the former deputy mayor Chu Wang-ji from the Taiwan's People's Party. If I've mispronounced the names at all in any of these videos, I apologise. The stakes are high as China warned that there is a risk of war if the DPP continues to stay in power. While DPP's Alan is the frontrunner, his opposition is arguing that the ruling party's posture creating a security risk for Taiwan in the form of possible war. The US, on the other hand, is a significant international ally of Taiwan and provides Taiwan with the means for self-defense. Hence, the Taiwanese elections have also become a theatre for competitive interests of the rival superpowers. So, without a doubt, China, obviously, if you guys know, obviously, we've been talking about the tensions between China and Taiwan and the stakes, obviously, there. Xi Jinping has made it very clear that the idea obviously is that he would rather take back Taiwan peacefully rather than by force. However, there is never and one thing that he wants in his legacy is before his time is up is that he will want Taiwan. That will be one of the things he'll want in his legacy, to unify China as one, because what will always be remaining while still to this day is that China and Taiwan, there cannot be two Chinas. There can only be one. There can only be one Chinese nation, and that is what the People's Republic of China believe in. But that is also what Taiwan believes as well. They believe that China should be a part of them as well. So it is a two-way. So China has never recognized Taiwan as for its independent status in any way, shape, or form. So how does this? So what is the likely outcome here? I honestly don't know. Is my straight answer. However, there has been the same party has been in power since 2016, so that has been quite a while now. Obviously, we're now into 2024. I don't think, based on my gut feeling, is that I don't see a peaceful transition into becoming part of China. I think it needs to be, if they were to do it, there would have to be an actual election for a referendum for the people of Taiwan to make that decision. And if they do, I think the chances are, if it was not rigged in any way, if it was a free and fair referendum on the vote, I think the people of Taiwan would reject it. I think they would. But the US will also be no doubt watching closely as well, because if the same ruling party stays in power, there will obviously be questions about, well, how's China going to respond to this? Are they going to go in? Because the thing is that even if China was to get ready and prepare for war, like really start having the ships on the borders and whatnot, there are many US outposts and bases not far from Taiwan's island are ready to step in and assist in any way, shape or form against China. So you could end up having open war between China and the United States of America, because they have made it very clear that they will protect Taiwan here as well. So I don't think China doesn't want that. They don't want to go to war, but if things don't start changing, they may go down that road. So this one really is one of tension for sure. So January the 13th, definitely one to watch, guys. Pakistan, guys. So Pakistan, which votes for its national legislature on February the 8th, has been facing a turbulent political landscape since its former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who was elected in July 2018, was removed in a no-confidence vote in April 2022. An intense crackdown on its party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the PTI, and political activists have sparked concerns about the credibility of the election and the role of the country's all-powerful military establishment in it. The country is currently run by a caretaker government led by interim Prime Minister Anwar Khan Khattar. It has a population of more than 241 million people and 127 million registered voters, according to the data released by the Election Commission in September 2023. And political tension escalated on May the 9th, 2023, when parliamentary security officials arrested Khan in an anti-corruption case, which he has denied and said he was politically motivated. Following his removal, Khan has openly opposed Pakistan's military apparatus, which has been embedded in the country's politics and economy since its inception. In the months following the May the 9th, about 500,000 supporters and the aides of the PTI were arrested, according to the Interior Minister Rali Sonarua. Several members also left the party amid this atmosphere. Last week, Khan's nomination bid to contest the election was also rejected. Never before in Pakistan's history have we had such an impression of unfairness and the election process starting a month or two before the actual elections, says Raz Bashir, a professor of political science at the Lahore University of Management Science. The crackdown from the Pakistani establishment has discouraged political participation and added to the impression that elections will be rigged in favour of one of the country's mayors and dynamics of political parties. Pakistan's Muslim League Nazarwak or Pakistan's People's Party PPP, according to Raz. We may not see a spirited participation of the people, said Raz, adding that he expects a voter turnout in the forthcoming elections to be the lowest in Pakistan's history. Former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who was in exile for several years following a spate of case and convictions on corruption charges, has returned to Pakistan. Courts have overturned past convictions against him, and many analysts see him as the military's favourite candidate to lead the country next. So this looks like it's going to be potentially an election here for Pakistan that may not be one for the fate of hearted. Clearly, that they're based on the information here, guys, is that it's not going to be a very good. It's going to be one of the lowest turnouts in history. People are not confident in the current establishment and the choices here. And many feel, from based on the information that we're reading here, is that it's not going to be a free and fair election in any way, shape, or form. It does question where Pakistan is going from here. And Nawaz Sharif, who's been in exile for 7 years, has always is coming back, and it looks like it's going to be the leading candidate. So there's obviously been corruption going on here based on the information here. So it looks like right now 2024 is not going to be a very good year for Pakistan. But you never know. Perhaps things may change. Like I say, sometimes we've got to have some faith in the democracy would come through, but it doesn't look like things are going to be going well in the direction for Pakistan. But definitely one to keep an eye on, guys. So that one will be taking place. They got national legislate will be on the February the 8th, guys. That one. Okay, the next one is Indonesia. So Indonesia, also in February, Indonesians will vote in the world's largest single-day election to choose their president, vice president, and nearly 20,000 representatives for districts, provincials, and national parliaments. Although free and fair elections have been widely celebrated in Indonesia since its democratic transition in 1998, the democracy is still dominated by political, business, and military figures who established their prominence during the Soeharto's authoritarian rule. Sorry, I can't say that word for some reason. Apologies. Right, Sarah Jenny of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. She added that power has largely shifted among the Soeharto-era elites, even though the current president, outsider Jokowi Widodo, has averted this transition by winning the highly competitive 2014 election through popular vote. He has learned that he needs to play by the rules of the elite. Now that Jokowi has completed his maximum 2 terms, 3 candidates are vying to succeed him: Prabowo Subianto, Ganjar Pranowo, and Aris Baswedan. So his defense minister, Prabowo, 72, he's 72 years old, bear in mind, is representing the national right-wing Granada Party. His running mate is Widodo's son, the 36-year-old Gabriel Rakbami Raka, who is controversial due to allegations of inexperience and being a Nebo baby. Besides this, Prabowo has allegedly involved in kidnapping of students and activists in 1998 and is accused of other human rights abuse. Despite this controversy, Prabowo seems to be a frontrunner in the race. Well, that's not very good if those accusations are running over his head. However, it does say that the elections have been pretty free and fair in Indonesia, so we have to take that into account. Gibran was allowed to contest elections despite being under the 40, the minimum age of running candidates. He has previously held public office as the current mayor of Surakarta. This caveat was introduced by Indonesia's constitutional court in October. Jokowi's governing sector Nationalist Democratic Party of Struggle, the PDIP, has selected Ganjar as its candidate. Meanwhile, Enes is favoured by conservative Muslims and Islamic groups. He chose Muzawasko Asaka, the chairman of the Islamic National Awakening Party, the PKB, as its running mate. After the first presidential debate in December, Usman Handi, the head of Amnesty Indonesia, noted that Ganjar and Handi's talk about the freedom of expression, accountability for violence by security forces, and resolution for past human rights abuse during the debate, while Palo, who has been in power, did not. So interesting one here in Indonesia. It looks like here, obviously, that they've had pretty fair democratic transitions of power since 1998, according to this. And they're going to be having one of the world's largest single-day elections. 20,000 representatives, that's a huge amount. Vice president and president, it really is a massive election, massive day of election for Indonesia. While I don't know too much about the parties and their and their and their foreplays, guys, it will be definitely, hopefully, it will be, if parties change, hopefully it'll be peaceful transitions. And I wish nothing but peace and prosperity for the people of India. Is my best. So let's hope for that one way or another, guys. India. In the spring of 2014, Bharatiya Janata Party, the BJP leader Narendra Modi was sworn in as India's 14th Prime Minister. A decade later, he appears poised to win a third straight term in office in what will be history's largest ever democratic exercise. 900 million voters will choose their next government. This is quite an interesting one, to say the least. There will be world ramifications on this one, more than any of the ones we've discussed so far, in my opinion. Running against Modi's Hindu majority Bharatiya Janata Party is a coalition of 28 parties called the Indian National Development Inclusive Alliance, the INDIA. The INDIA is led by the main opposition, the Indian National Congress Party, spearheaded by Rahul Gandhi, whose father Rajiv Gandhi, grandmother Indira Gandhi, and great-grandfather Jawaharlal Nehru were all prime ministers. So there is a history there of passing on power. Over the decade of the BJP's government's rule, the country has seen what the ruling parties criticise call an erosion of democracy. Academic and writer Apurva Singh told Al Jazeera that autonomous institutions, including the Election Commission, have lost their autonomy. In December, an investigation revealed that the Indian government was likely surveying high-profile journalists using Pegasus spyware. Earlier in the same month, 141 opposition lawmakers were suspended from Parliament. The shrinking space for the opposition and attempt to cohese the media have emerged as prominent issues in the elections, alongside a struggling economy, rising unemployment, and attacks by the Hindu nationalists on religious minority communities. Parts of the country, such as the northeast state of Manipur, has been on fire for months after ethnic clashes broke out in May. Meanwhile, the far-right Rashtriya Swachh, the RSS, the ideological parent of the BJP, has increasingly been able to influence the nation's textbooks, sparking concerns that the next generation of Indians could embellish myths over science and history, and bigotry over secular values. These elections are very crucial because this is the only chance to revive democracy in India, Amapurval has said. Yet Modi remains vastly popular in major parts of the country. The BJP steamrolled opposition parties to triumph in a series of state elections in December, signposting its political strength entering 2024. Despite challenges, the size of India's economy has overtaken those in France and the UK. India has also become the fourth country to have a successful moon landing and hosting the G20 summit. So for India, guys, it appears that that perhaps democracy here is eroding based on the information we have here. And I have talked about some of the things in the past where there have been times where India hasn't exactly, what's the right words? They haven't exactly been free and fair, shall we say, with how things have come, from what I have read and heard from this. Now, the people there, there's definitely, religion is playing without a doubt, in my opinion, a huge factor in what's happening in there. But they have a massive economy because of the population. That one of the things that India is because of its massive population, it has a very huge economy, and it really does one that the world really does look to as well. You know, people talk about the economies of China all the time, about the influence that China has. India has a fair share of sway, of power, in the world, guys, and it's not really one that's talked about as much as China, really. And they really do have that. One thing that people is that in order people do rely on this economy, and I am concerned about the direction that India is going and where they are going. I'd like to think that things will continue to change for the better, but democracy is fading there from what's happened. Like 141 opposition lawmakers suspended from Parliament here, using Pegasus spyware. These kind of things are in order to basically take control, to have the things in your favour as opposed to free and fair elections. This is not a good direction whatsoever for India. And of course, there is the conflicts with religions that have taken place from minority communities as well, and we've heard about them in the past, and they are still happening in places in India. They just don't get talked about. So, but they have come a long way as well. So they hosted a G20. A successful moon landing is not really something you really think about, but they definitely have one to definitely keep an eye on for sure, guys. It's going to be very fascinating for sure, but do I see a change at their election? Not really, if I'm honest. Okay, South Africa. Between May and August, South Africa is expected to hold its 7th national elections since the apartheid in 1994. South Africa has a population of 16 million and about 27 million registered voters. Since 1994, the African National Congress, the ANC, has held uninterrupted power, but its supporters fear the party's votes will fall short of the 50% needed to win this year. Led by President Cyril Ramaphosa, the ANC support has dipped to 45%, according to an October 2023 poll by the Social Research Foundation. Corruption scandals linked to the government officials have become frequent, while Ramaphosa also paranoid his predecessor, Jacob Zuma, who refuses to testify about corruption and state capture during his tenure. ANC's primary opponent is the Democratic Alliance, the DA, led by legislator John Stuyvesant. He has formed alliances with smaller parties to remove the ANC. However, DA ranks lower than the ANC in polling, while many black politicians have left in recent years, hurting its potential to see an inclusive institution. So, South Africa has really lost its way. I look back to remember when they first hosted the World, when they were the first African country to host the World Cup. I remember when they did that, and what a moment it was. And I feel like so much has changed since then. There was still, even then there was still obviously there was still major poverty as there is now. But you just wonder, with all that money that came in from it, where did it all go? What happened? And it seems that you want South Africa to change, to do the right thing, but there's lots of corruption and scandals that are taking place there. It doesn't look like that things are going to change at the moment. Not good for the people of South Africa right now, I would say. Keep fighting is the best thing I will say for those from there. Keep fighting. Mexico is gearing up for its largest ever election on June the 2nd that could see it elect a woman as its first president for the first time. Mexico has a population of about 129 million and approximately 96 million registered voters. For the first time, all 32 states in Mexico will be holding elections concurrently, while 20,000 positions, including the presidency, congressional seats, governorships, and local offices, will be filled by contesting candidates. Better known by its initials, the AMLO, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador from the Morena Party currently leads the nation, but the country has a one-term limit. Interesting. So, Mexico has a one-term limit, so you can't be in power for more than, you can only have one go in power, guys. So, interesting to say the least. So, Claudia Sheinbaum, a scientist and former Mexico City mayor, is the new face of Monterrey, and is also a frontrunner with a significant lead in polls. She has pledged to address challenges such as gang violence and to try to use nearshoring, a rising trend of the US relocating business operations to Mexico to cut costs to help the country's economy. Jovi Gavez, a senator with Indonesia's roots, who represents the National Action Party, sets out to challenge Morales' dominance and is campaigning on the promise to combat violence. We've seen I'm sure a lot of presidents and elections that take place in Mexico, they all say they're going to tackle violence and talk about it, but how much of them really do actually do it? Almo's term has been the bloodiest in Mexico history, with a record number of murders. The so-called war on drugs, which was initiated 3 presidential terms ago, has failed to reduce violence. The next government will be tested on whether it will continue with militarized strategies or explore alternatives. Less punchy policies, deep inequalities in access to quality healthcare and education persist. It is interesting that it could have its first woman as a president. It's a great thing that I will say, in terms of a democratic thing, it's great that the first time all 32 states in Mexico are going to be holding elections. 20,000 positions, presidential, congressional seats, governments, and local officials. It's a step in the right direction on that. I will say that, guys, and so it could be the right steps. But we know that Mexico is shrouded in corruption. We know it is, and the cartels, the drug cartels, and that still have a massive influence in Mexico. There will one day, I would like to say, that one day something will come through. But in every one of these elections, they promise to crack down on the violence and stuff. And does it really change? No. So people have. It's been one thing for people to say they're going to make a difference. It's another for the actions of it. And Mexico seems to be stuck in this cycle for quite a while. And I really don't feel that the only way that things are going to change for Mexico is international intervention. I feel. But it still has a massive influence, because they are the ones who handle they work alongside the US when it comes to the border there, when it comes to immigration as well. So it is still a country that many people do keep an eye on when it comes to elections, that is for sure. But whether things will change or not, only time will tell. The European Union, guys. Every 5 years, the European Union, EU citizens participate in elections to choose their representatives in the European Parliament, the only directive elected transitional assembly globally. These elections take place across all 27 EU member countries. Members of the European Parliament, the MEPs, shape and decide new laws that govern various aspects of life in the EU, from healthcare to employment. MEPs also elect the President of the European Commission, currently Ursula von der Leyen, the first EU female president. The elections will take place from June the 6th to June the 9th. Election days are divided between countries. For example, the Netherlands conducts elections on a Thursday, while France holds them on a Sunday. A total of 720 MEPs will be elected, while members of the national political parties can also contest. Some of the key issues in this cycle include climate policies, immigration laws, security and defence, especially amid the multiple conflicts plaguing the world, from the Middle East to Russia's war in Ukraine. So no doubt there will no doubt be influence from certain right-wing parties in certain countries that will try and disrupt the way the European Parliament is upholding. I expect Ursula von der Leyen to continue on as president. I could be wrong. It is a democratic, and it is a very good system that the European Union has. And I'd like to hope that not too much right wing has influence in the European Parliament, and that is still a free and fair system. The free and fair systems continues, obviously, and that those who do go in and go into the European Parliament and become MEPs make laws and decisions that improve the lives of everyone within the European Union, within Europe, and look at the ways that they can tackle immigration in a free and fair, humane way, how they can support what's currently happening with regards to the Middle East, what's happening with Ukraine as well, I'm just kind of like, they are the European Union are the example that everyone should be looking at. They are the ones that everyone should be looking at when it comes to the most freedom and most fairest of election. There is very little corruption when it comes to these, little to none, I would say, almost to go as far as to say, because of the way, because there are so many nations, there are so many weeds, so many entanglements here. In order for, it's just, even if one little party or one nation was within against the interest of the EU as a whole, it cannot do as much as it would need a vast majority of nations in order to unweed the European Union and its electoral system. So let's hope that the right people get voted into European parliaments. Obviously, I wish Ursula von der Leyen the best in this, and definitely be watching very closely. I know many of my EU followers will definitely be watching that one extremely closely, as we'll be watching this one very closely, guys. The United States. Oh, God. On the 5th of November, the United States of America will vote for its president, all seats in the House of Representatives, and the third of the seats in the Senate. The presidential race this year seems to be a remnant of 2020, where Democrat Joe Biden, who is current president, faces off against Republican Donald Trump, who he defeated 4 years ago. By the way, this is subject to change, obviously, as based on what we know, what's going on in America currently. Let's be very clear. Trump has a massive lead over Republican rivals Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, despite multiple indictments against him and his absence from all Republican debates so far. Trump's popularity among Republicans remains unshaken because he has reshaped the Republican Party. One of the mistakes people think is make his thinking is that the group of Americans out there who are Republican have stayed the same, said Perrin. Many traditional libertarians or religious various religion conservatives have left the party in the wake of Trump's 2016 victory. At that same time, a segment of what it gets called the white working class left the Democrats and joined the Republican Party, he explained. The people who are now in the party are people who were drawn in by the popularity of Donald Trump. The Republican Party has changed significantly since he came in, without a doubt. Perrin, who does not think candidates besides Biden or Trump are likely to stand unless a legal problem or a health issue comes up. They both hold really commanding leads within their electorate. Yeah, this is why I have a real bone to pick with Joe Biden, guys, because there are many Americans, and I'm sure some of you guys will probably agree with me. Joe Biden should not be running again. He should not be running again, but the problem is you have to build up. If you're going to have somebody to replace him or be able to beat him, you've got to be able to build that candidate up, and you've got to get him out there, and you've got to really put his face in front of the cameras consistently. And his accolade and his CV must speak. He or her CV must speak for themselves. And that person is just not there. And the thing is that both these potential candidates, President Biden and Trump, they're old. They're very old. They're old white men. And this is the biggest gripe I think people that I would have if I was an American. I would say, why can't we have someone a bit younger? Like, why do we have to have an old white man here? Like, and the thing is that Barack Obama, for whatever, I know there are still some Americans who feel that maybe Barack Obama didn't do as good as people wanted, or maybe things he did some good things but did some bad things and whatnot, and I get that, but it was a major change in the landscape for America. The guy had 8 years as president. Barack Obama did, and he really did shape a lot of politics and differences, and he was the first African American president, first black president as well, and he was a huge milestone and a huge change here for them. And the next step really has to be the first female US president. They need one. I really do think they need one for the sake of the world. I don't think it should be Kamala Harris in any way, shape, or form. I don't, based on what I've read and heard about her. But and I don't think Hillary Clinton done herself right. I mean, people will say obviously that the email stuff was blown out of proportion, and that's what brought her down against Trump. But the other point as well is that she is part of the Democratic establishment. She's obviously husband of Clinton, of course. So there's that link there. So a fresh face is what America needs, and I do believe they need to have. America does seriously need to find somebody, a woman that is willing to, that is going to be can really shake things up in America for the better. That can really do make a difference for America. I do believe that that can happen at some point in the future. How and where, I'm not sure, guys. But I do generally believe that there will be in my lifetime a female United States president. I do believe it will happen, and I generally hope it will be for the better for the world as well, not just for America, because I think it's an absolute joke that we look like that we may be having, that Americans will be having to pick between two old white men again. I think it's just people want something different, and yes, Biden has done some good things has done some good things, and and yes, I do watch from Brian Tyler Cohen's point of view and a few others from the what we would call the left side of sort of things. But I've also seen. I just don't know whether we don't know at the time of this recording whether or not Trump's going to be able to run, what the significance are going to be if he does become president again. I do think, in my personal opinion, that if Donald Trump becomes the president of the United States, Ukraine will die. I generally believe Ukraine, the nation, will die. He will pull all military resources and funding to support Ukraine will be gone without America's help. And I do think Ukraine will die if Donald Trump gets elected, and I don't want that to happen. I know one or two people who are Ukrainian, and it would break my heart if America pulls away from what it is always been one of the freedom countries of the world that really stands up for other democratic nations. And it seems like that the perception now is that America should look after its own and stop looking after the world, sort of thing. And I would hope that the EU were able to, if that does come down that path, I would like to think that maybe the EU can keep Ukraine on its feet and still, but I do believe that Ukraine will die if Donald Trump becomes president, guys. I really, really do. But this is about America. This is about its country, its nation. What its identity is going to be in this election. What is the future for them? What are they looking at and hoping for from both from a continuation of President Biden or potentially Trump? If it's not, if for somehow by some way Trump does not get to run for candidate and they have to choose between the other two candidates, Ron DeSantis, from I know a little bit of him. He's really shot himself in the foot several times as a candidate. He's said and done some stupid things. He was actually at one point really quite popular, really, really popular, but his popularity has just dropped off a cliff with some of his actions and remarks. He had quite a strong base when he got going, but since then he's kind of just dived off a cliff. For him, I don't know too much about the other Republican candidate, but anyone who's looking to challenge Biden, I've not heard a peep. I mean, one of the future presidents that I would like to see, one of the future people who I think potentially maybe is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but I know some people think that she's a bit too wacky and wild, but from the Democratic side, but I think she seems to be someone with a level head, and that someone who was once a waiter, to see her becoming a president in the future, I think that would be a fascinating story, to say the least, to show that, and it would show the entire world, as well as Americans, that you can have that dream of becoming a president, no matter who you are and what your background would be. It would be a great fairy tale story if she was to ever run and become president of the United States, in my opinion. But I know some people have disagreements with some of her policies and outings, and that's fine. But rambling on for a bit too long there. Excuse me. Perrin believes that the outcome of the election could serve as a bellwether for the rest of the world. Oh God, excuse me. I don't know what is up with me at the moment, guys. I apologise. Perrin believes that the outcome of the election could serve as a bellwether for the rest of the world, and a victory of the Republicans could mean Americans' isolationism affecting other parts of the world. Because when Trump says he will take care of Americans and we will only act in the interest of Americans globally, that is also a signal to the rest of the world that it should behave in a sort of self-interesting way. While it is clear that the outcome of the US elections will influence the rest of the world, whether the outcome of elections in the rest of the world will influence the US is a different story. From social science standpoint, I think Americans are not particularly good at observing the rest of the world, says Perrin. Yeah, just final thoughts on it. Obviously, if Trump does end up becoming president again, it will not be about the rest of the world. It will only be about America. Not to say that Biden doesn't care about America, because he has shown, and some of his acts are in the interest of Americans, but it really will be cutting off a lot of support and aid and help for the rest of the world for America. So it really will be very different times in coming ahead if Trump does become president. That is for sure. But again, one you cannot miss without a shadow of a doubt. Ghana will head to the polls on December the 7th to elect the members of the country's parliament, as well as the successor to President Nana Akufo-Addo of the New Patriotic Party, the NPP. Akufo-Addo is the centre-right and Liberal Conservative NEP, was sworn in as president in 2017 after winning the 2016 election. He won again in 2020 and was sworn in for the second term in 2021. In both of these elections, he narrowly defeated John Mahama of the Social Democratic National Democratic Congress, the NDC. After the 2020 elections, Mahama disputed the results and filed a petition in the Supreme Court and begrudgingly accepted defeat when it was rejected in March in 2021. Mahama, who was president of Ghana from 2012 up to 2017, is contesting again this year, but not against Akufo-Addo, since the constitution bars him from running for a third term. Instead, the NEP elected Vice President Morala Bashwama after he won the primaries. Bashwama will be the first Northerner and Muslim to contest the presidential elections under the NPP, a movement dominated by ethnic Akan, which analysts say will pose another challenge for Mahama, who is also from the north. The West African gold and cocoa exporter currently grapples with the worst economic turmoil in years. Inflation hovers at a record 50.3%, the highest in 21 years. Government expenditure during the pandemic led to a high public debt amounting to $48.9 billion as of September. That represents 70% of gross domestic product, GDP. Whoever gets elected will face the challenge of pulling Ghana out of its electoral turmoil. So Ghana are not in a very good place financially. Obviously, having a 50% inflation is really, really bad, and having the massive debt that's hanging over them. There's a lot of problems that they have from an economic point of view here. However, they did strike a deal earlier this year with the EU. No, it wasn't with them. It was Kenya, I believe. My apologies. However, I do believe that Ghana is one of the more nations that has opportunities still to come out of this. I do believe that they can do that. I don't know too much, obviously, in terms of the contestants and whatnot, but I do think Ghana still has can play a vital role in Africa. In terms of corruption, I would say obviously there's corruption in all countries, guys, to be fair. But it looks like that their presidential and electoral system is seems quite fair and reasonable. So it will be interesting to see how Ghana goes from here. It won't be until the end of the year, this one, so lots can happen, lots can change, obviously, between now and then. But it will certainly be one of interest for sure, guys. So that is from Al Jazeera, guys. I know we're nearly. What did you guys think of some of those elections? Let me know in the comment section down below. Before we go to, just got one more article I just want to pull up, guys, to talk about the United Kingdom, because I think it's fair that we talk about the UK, even though we haven't been told whether it will be this year or early January, because it could potentially be early January 2025. It is unlikely, but it can still be the case. I wanted to read this article from you guys. If you can, just before I do, can you remember just to hit the like button, share across social media, and hit that bell notification icons so you'll be notified when I upload another video, guys. And subscribe if you can. All that stuff really does help support the channel. So this is the last one, guys. This is from Open Democracy. It was a couple of days ago, but I do think it's just a couple of key points from the United Kingdom's point of view. So more than just election, the other key political events in 2014, from new immigration laws to the COVID inquiry modules on 2014, 2024 is more than just a year heading to the polls. So it's pretty much, we're going to read into it before I actually give my overall thoughts, guys. So after 3 prime ministers in 2022-2023 and almost quiet in the UK politics, of course, there were 7 by-elections, the firing of numerous senior cabinet ministers, MPs facing various sexual assault allegations, and a former prime minister being found to have lied to Parliament, but all in his pretty quiet time, relatively speaking. But as January rolls around, let's look forward, not back. There will be an election. This was confirmed to journalists at the event in Downing Street last month, with Rishi Sunak having to face up to his poor polling numbers when the UK votes for the first time since the pandemic. But whether it lands in spring or autumn next year will still hold some important moments outside of a new government. From statutory inquiries to the new laws on immigration, here are some of the political events coming in 2024 we think you need to know about. So the COVID inquiry. 2023 was a wild year for the COVID inquiry, but it's far from over. The statutory inquiry will complete its module on political governance and decision making, looking at Scotland in January, Wales in February, and Northern Ireland in April. In the summer, it will begin hearing evidence of a new module on vaccines and therapeutics. This will cover vaccine rollouts, vaccine uptake, and the UK's vaccine damage payment schemes. So the COVID inquiry, obviously, guys, will still continue on. The next couple of months will be covering around, obviously, things in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland. So for those in Scotland, keep an eye out and just be interesting to see how, obviously, people like Nicola Sturgeon, for example, will be asked, obviously, will no doubt have her thoughts in how Scotland handled their way of dealing things in the COVID inquiry. So, and Wales with Mark Drayford, for example, as well. So there will be questions and answers there with regards to how things were handled during their tenures, their devolved nations. Voter ID. Although voter ID was required for the local elections in May last year, 2024 will be the first time it will be used for a general election. Many human rights groups believe this will make it harder for voters who are already disenfranchised, and research has shown that those from disadvantaged groups are less likely to have valid ID. So this is where hugely, guys, hugely, so many organisations out there need to get and knock on many different doors and make sure that people, whether it's leaflets, whether it's campaigns online or whatever, people need to be told, hey, you need to have voter ID. People need to be told. Still to this day, there are people up and down the United Kingdom who are not aware that, up and down England, who do not know that they need to have voter ID. They will not be telling people about this. If people need to be told that they need to have ID to be able to vote. It's really, really important that message gets out there. Renters Reform Bill, the landmark renting bill that is hoping to slightly tip the balance of legislation back in tenants' favour, will likely reach its final stages in 2024. That is, if it doesn't face a fatal rebellion from the landlord backbenchers of the Conservative Party. The heavily delayed bill, first announced in 2019, will include a ban and no-fault evictions, but with an unclear start date, creating a register for landlords and publish periodic tendencies. Many tenant campaigners said it is overdue and doesn't go far enough. It has been a crap SHIT year for renters. They need this renters reform bill passed, and considering what they've been putting up with the last 13 years, I think we know where they're going to be voting, the vast majority of them. Eradicating rough sleeping. The Conservatives' 2019 manifesto promised to end the blight of rough sleeping by next election. At the time, the then PM Boris Johnson said homelessness cannot be right and pledged the world will work tirelessly to end it. Open Democracy found this was unlikely to happen with some of the key policies aimed at helping those without homes still at pilot stage. This has gone down the toilet simply because Boris Johnson made a pledge and failed to deliver that pledge, guys. He basically lied. He was never going to be able to do that. And considering the rise of immigration as well, what's happened is that a lot of people whose asylum claims have been processed have ended up becoming homeless. So what's Labour going to do about rough sleeping, guys? That's a good question. Minimum wage rises in April. In his autumn statement, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt announced a rise of minimum wage from £10.42 an hour to £11.44 an hour. If you're over 21, this will come on April 1st. This is designed to woo those of the middle class, to making them think that, hey, if you stay with us, this is an incentive for people to basically continue to vote Conservative. If you're stupid enough to vote Conservative based on the minimum wage increase, don't be an idiot. You're not going to be better off under the Conservatives. This is just an incentive to make people think that they're going to be better off. The minimum wage is still crap. It's nowhere near the level that it needs to be for people to be able to make ends meet. The cost of living crisis is still taking place. It's a nice help, but it's not going to make a difference in your pocket in the overall long run, guys. New migration rules. The government has spent hundreds of millions of pounds in almost many hours fighting its cruel Rwanda scheme, which is now again found to be unlawful in November, this time by the UK Supreme Court. In response to that ruling, the government has rushed through new legislation hoping to reverse findings of the Supreme Court and attempt to rule out future legal challenges. This year, the Safety of Rwanda Bill will face amendments from MPs from the Lords, where it could struggle to make a legislation in its current form, going by the strong opposition in many Tories, let alone the opposition. And what has been confirmed is a new range of measures intended to reduce legal migration to the UK whose impacts by those loved ones aren't UK citizens. This includes social care workers not being allowed to bring partners or children on their visas. Also includes a hike in the minimum income requirements for someone's spouse to be sponsored for their visa. The Home Office had planned to raise this to 38,700, but within weeks of announcing a U-turn following a fierce backlash saying the threshold would rise to 29,000 increase instead. That's still an increase of more than 10,000, though. These controversial changes are set to be introduced in 2024. So migration is going to be one of the biggest talking points, obviously, in the United Kingdom, without a shadow of doubt, guys. We've talked countless times about immigration in the UK. So, what are my final thoughts on the UK election, guys? So, it is going to be a straight-up battle between the Labour Party under Sir Keir Starmer and the current Prime Minister, Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. I don't think there will be a change of party in the Conservatives between now and whenever the general election will be. Do I think it's still going to be in spring? There is still that possibility, but the more time passes, the more I'm less inclined to believe that. Although he could still change things up depending on pollings and what things could happen between now and then. But the thing is that the ball is in Sunak's court of when he wants to call the general election. As for Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, let me be very clear about this. I am not a Labour person. You don't see me with a red hat on. And yes, while I do support Labour Social and what they do, I am not going to BS. Yeah, you guys here in the chat, I am still sceptical of Labour and what some of the policies that they are bringing forward, whether they're going to keep their words on certain things. And I think that's right that they be held to account. Now, obviously, there are some people who will also say, that Sir Keir Starmer is just going to stab us all in the back as soon as he gets into power. We don't know for certain. I will say, yes, we are speculating what Keir Starmer is going to do when he comes into power. One thing we do know is that we are all in agreement that we are sick and effing tired of Conservatives. We've had them for 14 goddamn years. 14 years is a long time for one party. The UK is so much worse off than it was back then, guys. We said it so many times. Look at our national healthcare service. Look at our homelessness. Look at our cost of living crisis. Look at our police force. Look up and down. Look, literally, go out of your home. Walk down your high street. Is your high street thriving? Are people really happy? How many closed up shops are there still? Are we really better off? Have our lives improved? That's the real question here. This is the question that you need to ask yourself when you're thinking about voting Conservative. Is your life better off after 14 years? Are your children's lives better off? Are they getting a better education after 14 years? There are so many faults, guys. And the Conservatives are not the same Conservatives as they were 14 years ago. They are not the same Conservative Party. You are not voting for the same kind of people that were there 14 years ago. You're not just vote. You've got to remember, guys, as well, is that whenever the United Kingdom's general election will be called, there will be a huge amount of tactical voting thanks to our first past the post system that we have that is not within the interest of the UK. I've said this before and I've said this again. Please, please, please do not Google tactical voting. Please do some research. Please think before you vote. as was suggested by Phil from A Different Bias. Check the bookies odds in your local area on the candidates is one way you can do it. Or you can go to trusted websites like stopthetories.org. Be careful, there will be a huge amount of misinformation and propaganda. This will be an incredibly dirty election as well. There is going to be a lot of misinformation out there. There's also going to be the use of AI, artificial intelligence, used in this battle as well. Don't take everything that you read and hear on whether it's right-wing or left-wing newspapers seriously, because they will do everything to smear one another of things. One thing I can tell you is that after 14 years, I'm fed up of conservatives. I'm fed up of conservatives, and I hope you guys are too. And that comes to the end, guys, of the election year video, guys. What did you guys think of some of the elections that we talked about today? What did you guys make of, what are your thoughts on some of them that are happening this year? Maybe some of the other ones that I haven't spoken about. Perhaps you guys have some thoughts on some other nations. There's a lot at stake here. Is democracy going to die in 2024? Or perhaps democracy may find its way? Lots of questions, guys. Lots of thinking. But whatever you do, guys, whoever you are in the world, make sure if you have an opportunity to vote, do so. Because even though the vote may not make the biggest of difference, it still means that your voice matters. Sitting on the sidelines means you don't have a say in what happens in your nation, wherever you are in the world. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments section down below. If you can, hit the like button, be greatly appreciated. Share this across social media. Hit that bell notification icon so you'll be notified of when I upload another video. And of course, guys, if you want to financially support me in the work that I do here, you can do so by being a YouTube member for either 99p or $2.99 a time, respectively. Or if you want to as well get exclusive content on either Rumble or Patreon, you can check out those links in the description down below as well. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.